And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Mills coming at you for the RBLR Rowdies show. I am here tonight, obviously, with my usual co-host, who is Carlos. Carlos, how are you doing tonight on this Monday, not a Tuesday? We are recording a day early so that we can make sure we get everything in on this busy week.
Yep. Busy week indeed. I'm doing well. I'm in the middle of exam season, as I mentioned before we started recording. Lots of work going on up here. So just busy times all around, James. Lots of papers due, wrapping up the year. But that just means I have a lot more to look forward to as the summer rolls around. I'll be able to be back home, be at all the games and stuff like that. So it should be a good time. I'm wrapping up. Weather's nice out. There was like a makeshift carnival on the lawn today up here at my university, and we had like a mechanical bull, and there's a bouncy castle, and it was funny just to have my friends let out our inner 12-year-old again and just jumped around on a bouncy castle. Always a good time. So yeah, it's been a good day. I'm excited-ish to talk about the result from this past weekend, but more excited to talk about what's coming up. James, how are you doing? What's going on down there?
Yeah, I will say I'm at least excited to get this review out of the way. Let's do that. And like you said, we have a very big game coming up this week to preview. We have another game coming up to preview that will be out a little later in the week. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. Yesterday, unfortunately, the Rowdies lost 1-0 to San Diego Loyal out in Southern California. In the RBLR Cup standings, that means that I'm sitting on 4 points. The guest spot has 2 points, and Eureka and Carlos each have 1 point overall. And we still need suggestions for a Victor's Prize on that one. So if you have any, obviously, please tweet at us. We are good with pretty much any suggestion as long as it's not illegal, let's say. We have to preview those 2 games. So on Wednesday, the Rowdies host MLS side Houston Dynamo in the Open Cup. We are going to get into that later today. We are going to have a lot more stuff online, and I am going to be doing the preview for the Open Cup website. So there's a lot to look forward to there. Just keep your eyes peeled on Twitter, on all of our Twitter feeds, I suppose it should be. And then obviously also in this week we have our second game that is another league game, and this is away to Detroit City. So that'll be on Saturday. The preview for that, like I said, will come out a little bit later in the week, but just keep an eye out because we have it all coming for you. Do not worry. And the other thing that I wanted to say before we hop into this, we do have a quick early advertisement for you guys. On May 20th, Saturday, May 20th, the RBLR Rowdy Show will be hosting our first ever watch party. The Rowdies will be taking on RGV Toros in Southern Texas. So why not have a watch party for everyone to come in? It will be at the Berry House Beer Company off of the Ybor Strip. So if you know Ybor, obviously it is another 2 blocks down, and then it is a really cool brewery that has a lot of good beers, a lot of award-winning beers. We will have a lot of stuff to give away. We will have beer to give away. We will have beer specials. There's all sorts of stuff. So, if you want to have a good time, if you want to drink some good beer, then please show up to that. And that is where we will leave it for the time being. And the last thing I will say before we hop in, we also did an interview last week with Lucky M. Kosana. If you want to listen to that, please go back and do so. It was an awesome interview that Carlos and I got to do, and I appreciate his taking the time to do that. So now, Carlos, we have done everything here. And if you could, please get us into the quick recap for the San Diego Loyal game.
Yeah, James, like you said, we had a tough result this past weekend. The lineup we came out onto the field with included Connor Sparrow in goal. Guillen, Kleeman, and Antley made up the back line. Harris, Ervo, Jordan Doherty, Ekra, congratulations to him, and I think we'll get into that a little bit more later on. And Spaulding made up the midfield unit. Spaulding, a little bit of news from this past weekend. Ryan Spaulding is a left wing back who came to us via New England Revolution. He'll be on loan with us throughout the rest of the season. Good looking player, has a lot of potential. Think he's a good addition to the team. He made his debut with us immediately this past weekend. And last but not least, we had Cal Jennings and Felix Schroeder making up the attacking unit up top. The Rowdies announced this lineup for the game. And yeah, in the first half, San Diego took the lead pretty late in the first half, if I'm not mistaken. And that was the only goal you'd see the rest of this game. It was really interesting to note that a 16-year-old James was in goal for the San Diego Loyal. Duran Ferree, Ferree, Ferree. This kid, 16 years old, has played for the U17 U.S. national team. So a kid with a lot of talent. Didn't really have to do much. I think he got jotted down as having made 0 saves officially on this afternoon. But I mean, congrats to the kid. A clean sheet on a game like this is no small feat. Even if you weren't too active. Congrats to him, and it's I think a good look for the USL to be fielding high quality players like this at such a young age. That being said, we probably should have peppered the goal a bit more and scored a bit more goals than we did. Not a great game overall, James, and I think for a variety of reasons. So let's just hop into that. First, I think the first news that came out of the pregame, even like after the lineups came out, but before kickoff, was that Lewis Hilton had somehow picked up an injury during the pregame warmups. Not what you want to see for a guy who's been kind of in and out this season, dealing with that injury that he had pretty early on. Seemed to have been recovered, but maybe remnants of that coming back to haunt him. Deion Harris actually slotted in for him in the midfield, and that was the replacement for the starting lineup. Let's just jump into that first half, James. I can't recall many good chances on our end in that first half. I can think of maybe one. How did the first half go? Did the loss of Lewis Hilton early on, do you think, have an effect in how we were able to perform or not able to perform?
Yeah, so Lewis Hilton is obviously a very important player for the Tampa Bay Rowdies. He is the midfield maestro, as a lot of people would like to call him. I would personally use the word metronome because he literally takes the ball and sprays it from side to side wherever he's facing. He likes to turn and he finds the other wing. And, I didn't see a lot of that in this past game. So I think that it did impact us. I also think that it impacted our ability to properly handle their midfield. So one player that you and I highlighted last week as being a potential sore spot for the Rowdies was Charlie Adams, the central midfielder for San Diego Loyal. He came into this game as their top assister with 3. And, it's still early in the season, so that's a pretty impressive number. But he is also just, generally known as a good player, and he's going to be a player that is going to cause problems. And so he did. I think that we were trying to shut him down a little bit too much, and then we ended up allowing the defenders to get themselves a little bit more involved. And, the other thing that has gone on this year that hasn't gone on so much this year, something that you and I have also noted, is that the Rowdies just aren't pressing as much as we've seen in past years. And there isn't as much pressure when we don't have the ball and it is at the feet of the opposing team's defenders. So they kind of had the time on the ball that they needed to set themselves up and put themselves in good positions. And with that, Charlie Adams and the other central midfielder, Joe Corona.
Yeah.
A former U.S. men's national team player. You don't want to give him the space, obviously, but they were able eventually to find some good spaces for themselves. And I don't think that we really had enough answer to that. I think Lewis Hilton being out really is kind of a problem. We think about the first couple games of the season, and honestly, those games without Lewis Hilton, we looked pretty listless, in my opinion. I think that we really didn't have much going for us to try to create and try to distribute the ball into space. So if we think about, Lewis Hilton's main role when we have the ball, like I said, he likes to take it, turn, and then find somebody on the opposite wing, or he likes to at least facilitate, with the players who are a bit more comfortable carrying the ball forward. Those might be Ariel Martinez, those might be Jan Ekra, Charlie Dennis as well. But without Lewis Hilton to get that play started, honestly, we don't have as much in it ourselves. And so I don't think that we had it either defensively or attacking wise for most of this game, and certainly not in the first half. But it was interesting because I was doing this in between in between doing other things or in the background. And one thing that I noticed whenever I looked up at the Rowdies when they had the ball, the Rowdies were in this little weird formation on the right. So Zach Harivo would be, sliding out to the right, and he would be kind of helping with Dayon Harris, who was getting up, and Connor Antley, who was also getting up. It was, I'm not entirely sure what the instructions were there, just because, we don't have access to the locker room or anything like that. I don't know what Neil Collins and co told them they wanted to do when the Rowdies have the ball, but it seemed like that was kind of the idea: go down the right side and, go down, especially with Dayon Harris, go down there with some pace. But unfortunately, of course, that never did turn into any chances. And that continues to be a theme that we've had for most of the season, that the Rowdies just aren't really creating many chances.
Yeah.
And, it's really unfortunate, because I don't like that that's where it is for us, as a team. But if you think about what you had already just hit on, there's a 16-year-old in net. So you really want to make him work for it. I don't think that Duran Ferry, whatever, we have to get a pronunciation guide from him. But without that, his being 16 years old, I don't know. I don't think this is his debut in USL Championship, but it is certainly one of his first professional games ever, even if it is not literally the first. So make him work, put him under some pressure, scare him a bit. That's what you're supposed to do at the professional level, certainly. I don't think that, Duran Ferry, I saw him play for the U.S. under-17 national team, and the under-17s lost to Mexico in the final. That was a good game to watch for, all of the players. But leading up to that, unfortunately, there is a bit of a gap in quality for the national team when they play teams like Nicaragua, when they play teams like St. Lucia. It's just unfortunately the case that those teams aren't really good. So Duran Ferry, if he's sitting in net, he doesn't really have to deal with anything, and it kind of builds up to the end of the tournament. I feel like playing against us, it was back to those same first days of the under-17 tournament, and he's just sitting there at the back. And you can see what Duran Ferry is most known for is his footwork, actually, because that's when he kind of shined the most. There wasn't really much other involvement for him. So in that sense, I just don't think it's not good enough, of course. And we have said that before, but the chance creation here is where we're sorely lacking. And unfortunately, Lewis Hilton being a big part of that, that's not something that you can really help when he's injured. But if he's injured, then having an adequate replacement is also very important, because you can't rely on one player to be there the whole season as much as Lewis Hilton has been. So anyway, Carlos, I've talked a lot here. If you could please take us into that goal that led us into the halftime break, and then we will we'll try and dissect that a little bit.
Yeah, I was going back and looking at what happened on that goal, because it just seemed like I don't really know where it came from. I just looked up, and all of a sudden Spaulding's on the ground, and Perez has, this really wide open lane to rip a shot. It's unfortunate, because that was kind of my first impression of our new guy, of Ryan Spaulding. I didn't really notice him much at all leading up to that moment. It looked like we were defending pretty well. And then there was just one moment, I don't know who passed it out to Perez, but that little pass kind of just changed the whole dynamic of that play. There was a lot of ball movement kind of in the middle at the top of the box. One more pass out to Perez spread the field a bit more, and all of a sudden it's kind of like a one-on-one look between Perez and Spaulding. Perez really didn't do anything all that extraordinary. He just kind of touched it in with his left foot, and all of a sudden had a lot of space to set up and rip a shot. I'm forgetting who had to press out on him. I have the clip here. I'm looking back at it. I can't really make it out from. I think that's Guillen. But that's not really Guillen's fault in that situation. It's not his man. It was a really, really unfortunate situation where I think Spaulding just kind of slipped. And next thing you know, Perez has a really wide open look, right, and rips a really good shot to his credit. It's not an easy finish. I'm not saying that at all. Sparrow, I think, actually made contact with the ball. you know, got his hand to it, but it's just an absolute rocket into the bottom corner, which I think is pretty impossible to save for most keepers. Yeah, Sparrow got a hand to it, but it slipped by, and all of a sudden, San Diego's up 1-0. Kind of out of nowhere. They weren't creating a ton either, to be honest. Yeah, it was, I think, one little mistake, one slip up. Guillen's too far back to press up to him, and wide open look. And that's kind of how the first half went, really. I can't recall a particularly good chance for San Diego other than that in the first half. It was pretty stale of a half. What else? Yeah, I think just to sum up our talk in the first half, I'm pretty disheartened by the offensive creation, kind of the, you know, effort to even like let a shot fly from distance every once in a while, because of, you know, the kid in goal. Just for context, I went back and looked back on his FOTMOB record. He made two starts or two appearances last season, right? They were he made one start last season against New Mexico United and let up 3 goals in the game that ended up 3-3. He came in. Yeah, he came in the second half of the game against Sacramento Republic and actually held his own pretty well. In the first half, the starting goalie, Vegas, let up 3 goals. Then Duran came in the second half and let up a goal. So, I mean, there's a kid who, like, seems to let up some goals if you pepper shots at them. It's just unfortunate that we weren't, like, really creating anything. Like, I don't know. It was kind of frustrating to watch. It seemed like they were, you know, playing a little more conservative, thinking of their U.S. Open Cup game later in the week. So I was a little disheartened by the result, especially because of that. But San Diego's a good team. So honestly, like, I wasn't, you know, expecting too much, but the lack of any creativity was a little unfortunate. And I think this goal was just kind of silly. That they scored really came out of not a lot. Spaulding was able to stay on his feet. I think, you know, that wouldn't have ended up in a goal. So yeah, and that was the end of the first half, right? There wasn't anything after that.
No, I don't remember anything. But if you could take us through the second half as you saw it, because I got to be honest, I didn't have a ton in my notes that I really wanted to be like, okay, so there was this or there was that. You know, what did you see then?
Yeah. Honestly, like, the second, I'm running out of things to say because I feel like I've repeated things that I've been saying in past episodes. The second half opened up, I think, with it was a San Diego opportunity that hit the post early on. Again, I have the clip pulled up here. It was in the 48th minute. I believe that's Kleeman who stepped up and, I don't know, just whiffed on the ball. I don't know if you recall that opportunity, James.
Yeah.
That was a little, I mean, my heart kind of dropped. That's not really what you want to see from one of your top guys. Kleeman's a defender with incredible quality. So that was the last thing I would have expected in a situation that looked like it could be a pretty routine clearance. Ball takes a weird bounce and Kleeman totally whiffs on it. Thankfully, I'm forgetting who takes that shot. I think it was a guy who I looked in the lineup and it said Ronaldo in the starting lineup for San Diego. That scared me a little bit. It was Ronaldo who hit the post on what should have been the second goal of the game for San Diego. So going into the rest of the second half, we probably should have been down 2-0, but we got bailed out. I was a bit encouraged by our response. I felt that we might be a little rattled and that was kind of going to be the end of the game. But all of a sudden, Deion Harris is pushing the ball up rapidly, doing his thing, and finds Cal Jennings on a really nice pass. I think Deion did everything right here. Cal just needs to, finish. And he got a little unfortunate because he hit one of the defenders' heads who was like on the ground. I'm forgetting the name of the San Diego defender. But this is an opportunity that really should be in the back of the net. And ended up taking that deflection and hitting the crossbar. So again, this was probably Duran's best chance to make a save this game in terms of there being a shot on target. But even then, we got a bit unlucky and hit the crossbar. And after that, James, that was it. That was really it. The rest of the game was just this kind of stalemate. San Diego pushing a bit for the second goal. They had another good look in what is this? The 75th minute. A good shot. That's Connor Sparrow was able to parry pretty easily, showing his quality. Other than that, nothing else really. I mean, that's kind of how the second half was. Just a lack of offensive creativity. We weren't doing anything necessarily too bad on defense. I don't usually have something to say about the back line. I think the only negative I have on the back line this game is that Kleeman error that should have probably led to the second goal. But I mean, other than that, the back line had a decent game. Sparrow had a decent game. I think for the most part, they did their job. I think we were missing production on the front side of things, James.
Yeah. The next question that I had, Carlos, was what progress did we see, if anything, in this game? And I don't know. I don't know. I think that maybe we did have some defensive progress, like you said. Honestly, I think getting Connor Sparrow game time is probably helpful because we know how good a goalkeeper is. He is, but I think that he could have done a little bit better job on the goal that he gave up in this game. But in particular, I think that he really could have done a better job against Charleston Battery, for instance. So if Connor Sparrow can keep getting game time, he's going to get a bit more sharp every single game that he goes out there. And I think that he'll eventually become the player that we know that he can be, of course. Once that is, better, then that'll be good for us as a team overall. So I guess that's a positive thing, that we did have a little bit more defensive.
Yeah.
Maybe not even cohesion, but some defensive reps, I guess.
Yeah, I will say, I think this is a mild improvement because in the past this season I've had a lot more scary things to say about the defense in terms of just how it's going to look for the rest of the year.
Yeah,
I'm pretty confident with where the back line's at, to be honest. And doing all this without Forrest Lasso, by the way, Forrest Lasso multiple times. What is going on in this hallway? Why do I record in a college campus? There's always something going on in the next apartment. But yeah, just generally, I'm happy with where the back line's at, and with Lasso back in, congrats to him. By the way, he just had his a child, so good reason to miss a San Diego game. Yeah. But even without him, the back line's doing well. So I think generally improvement back there. Reps with Sparrow is important to build that chemistry. And I think generally that things are looking up back there. The concern, I think, as it's been for most of the season, is the attack and what's happening up there.
Yeah, we do not have the cohesion that we need overall up there. And I think, I was talking about this with some of the Houston Dynamo people that we've been talking to for the upcoming game. And I said, I think that is one of our biggest areas that we do not have the proper patterns, set up at this point. I think Felix Schroeder is a lot better than Cal Jennings at getting on the end of crosses. Cal Jennings probably likes the ball at his feet a little bit more than Felix Schroeder might, but we need to integrate them a little bit better. And with JJ Williams coming off the bench, then we need to find out exactly what his role is going to be as a super sub. But I'm hopeful, obviously, that all of this will come right before Wednesday because that is a big game. So
yeah. Just to wrap up that comment on the attack, James, looking back, the starting two attacking players between Jennings and Schroeder had a combined one shot attempt in their their minutes on the field. Schroeder didn't pick a shot attempt off. Jennings had the one look that glanced off the crossbar that took that deflection. I think that kind of summarizes where that's at. I'm not saying anything bad about them as players because they have such incredible talent. But one shot attempt between the two of them in 60 plus minutes of gameplay isn't really going to cut it at any level of soccer. So exactly. We really have to figure out what's going on there. Could we credit some of that to Lewis Hilton being off and not being able to get the ball to them, move the ball well, maybe. But we have enough quality to where that really shouldn't be an issue. So it's pretty concerning that we can't even really create shot opportunities at all, right?
Yeah, that is unfortunately most of where it comes down to right now. So, Carlos, the next question is kind of ponderous, I guess. It's not super clear, but In the last 2 games, we've had 2 players make their 100th appearance for the team, those being Aaron Guillen, and now in the game against San Diego, loyal Jan Ekra. So these are 2 players who have been here long enough to make that many appearances. We're going to get to Jan Ekra a little bit more later in this show because we've got even more than just his 100th appearance for the Rowdies to announce. But with that being said, we've wasted their opportunities to kind of celebrate, and especially with Aaron Guillen's because that one was at home. So, with that, how do you maybe there's nothing to say here, but does that mean anything to you that we've just wasted these opportunities and that we've kind of, these are big players for us over the years. Jan Ekra has done a certain job. Aaron Guillen obviously has done a very certain job as a, one of our more prominent defenders and now the team captain. So what does it mean that we've kind of lost both of these games on their 100th appearance, each of their 100th appearance?
I don't know, James. I think it's as frustrating as it is for us as fans. Can you imagine how frustrating it must be for them to be like, these players that have been part of this club for so long, players that love the club totally, and then are producing pretty disappointing results for the fans. I don't really know what it says about the team as a whole. I would hope for like more like inspired performances from the squad as a whole when you have like a celebratory type game. It feels like something that should be kind of like pushing everybody to play a little like that much harder to celebrate with your man after the end of the 90 minutes. I don't know. It's probably a lot easier to go out, hit the town after you get a win and celebrate your 100th appearance than it is to do that after a loss or a tough draw or something like that, or I guess in this case 2 losses. So I don't know if it says anything about the squad as a whole. I just think I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, and I can only imagine how frustrating that must be. I feel like every time I think of an 100th appearance in the past, it's come with a pretty good result. I can't recall any specifically, but I always remember being pretty happy at the end of the Ralph's Mob 100-game tifo, and celebrating with the player at the end of the game. It's usually a good result. Maybe it doesn't say anything about the team right now, other than just that we're in a bad stretch of games, and the 100th appearances happen to come in that bad stretch of games. But it's unfortunate. I don't think it really means anything more than that. I can't help but feel for the actual players celebrating those 100th appearances, and kind of what those losses, they sting all that much more, right? On the 100th appearance. So I don't know. Thinking back to our interview with Lucky last week, I can only think that these losses starting to pile up based on that conversation are only becoming more fuel for the fire and driving these guys to want to train harder and produce better results. At the same time, if this kind of keeps going, I can imagine how quickly it could turn from wanting to play better to damn, it's just not our season, and kind of falling into that slump of just throwing the season away because there's not much to do with it. I think it's pretty early for that, but that's why I think it's very urgent to kind of get some momentum going sooner rather than later, so it doesn't turn into one of those throwaway seasons that I think, especially in the context of U.S. soccer, where relegation isn't really ever in the conversation.
Right.
It's pretty easy to just kind of throw it away, think about next season, and reset halfway through the season. So hopefully we don't get to that point. We have the squad to win a championship, truly. It just has to come together. So that's incredibly frustrating, honestly. And again, putting myself in the shoes of the players and guys that rep the green and gold for a living, it must be so frustrating. And again, I take encouragement from that interview with Lucky, because it seems like the guys just are training that much harder to produce better results now. And hey, there's a big chance on Wednesday to gain some momentum. So it comes at a good time or a bad time in terms of actual performances, but take it as you will. We have a really good opportunity to change the momentum of the season this week.
Yeah, I agree with that. I really hope that it obviously helps our fortunes. But one more question for you, Carlos, and then we will move on to our next segment about Houston. who was your man of the match for this game against San Diego Loyal, and quick why.
James, I'm gonna pick somebody on the back line, just because I think that was where our brightest spot was. I'm gonna go with Connor Antley. I think he produced the most noticeable game on the back line. In a good way. I think Kleeman produced the most noticeable game on the back line in a negative way, but it was just that one mistake on his part. I think other than that, Kleeman had a good game. But Antley had a good game. And again, like you mentioned earlier, he was pushing up a lot. He was kind of in the mix for creating those opportunities, along with Dayon Harris, which I think was an interesting kind of pairing.
Yeah.
I can't really think of too many times where I see Antley and Harris both pushing up on the same side of the field at the same time. So that was unique. And I think it added an interesting dynamic to the attack, which didn't really pan out, but I'm not really giving him the man of the match because of anything on the attack. I'm thinking more so in his defensive work, tracked back well, did a good job back there. Playing in that kind of like right center back, right back type hybrid position can be really challenging in Neil Collins' system. It's a very dynamic position, constantly moving up and down, but like also not really supposed to, because Dayon Harris is supposed to be the kind of guy that runs up and down as the wing back. So I think I always have admiration for Guillen, who's always in that left center back / left back spot, and whoever's playing on that right side, which in this case was Antley. I think Antley had a great game, very noticeable, and yeah, I think helped minimize San Diego's looks. Again, backline did their job for the most part. Sparrow did his job for the most part. Allowing one goal in a game is, the goal is always a shutout, right? But allowing one goal in the game is kind of like the next best thing. And if that's what you're doing in most games, it's probably pretty good. So it's just a matter of getting the attack going, like I said. So Antley had a good game. He's my man of the match. Quick. Never mind. I'll save that for later. Antley, man of the match.
All right. Well, my man of the match, I was tempted to go with Jan Ekra because of the occasion. I was tempted to go with Ryan Spaulding because of it being his debut, but I don't think that either of them really got there. I ended up going with Jordan Doherty because he ended in the position he ended up taking a position that I don't know if he actually expected to be in heading into the game. And as much as it, could have been better, could have been worse, I think that he ultimately did a good enough job to fill in on, a very last minute occasion for him. It was something that he was not expecting, and it was something that he ended up doing as best he could. So I appreciate that he did that very well. And I hope that, if he continues to play there because Lewis Hilton is out for any extended period, that he gets a little bit more with the reps. He gets a little bit more experience at being able to handle all of the responsibilities in that position, because it is a lot.
Yeah.
But I think that for the short notice, he did pretty well.
Yeah. I think one thing on quick note on this difference in style of play between Doherty and Hilton. I think what Doherty can bring to the, just, thinking about the bright side of things, casual, I'm always in my optimist phase, even after these losses. I think Doherty is an interesting player in that position, and I think he can excel in that spot as well. I think going forward, if he has to, I think he can do well in that position. He's somebody that's also not afraid to let a shot fly from distance. I think that's something that Lewis Hilton is a little more reserved about, which is fine. He creates chances in his own ways, but I think Doherty is always a little bit more willing to let a shot fly. I think we saw it in this game against San Diego. He had one pretty good look early on in the first half, which unfortunately just didn't get everything on it, and pretty easy save. Or no, I don't even think it was a save. I think it just was off target. But again, Doherty, I think, can exceed in that position. I think he had a great game, especially understanding the context of, I guess, not expecting to play that position going into the game. So I think that would have been my second, my honorary mention for sure. But again, I think if he has to play that position going forward for a couple games with Hilton out, pure speculation. We have nothing to indicate that.
Right.
I think he'd be fine and could even excel with a few reps at that spot.
Now, Carlos, we're going to head into our preview of Houston Dynamo. And once we get back on the other side, because this was pre-recorded, then we will talk about it a little bit. But before we do, I just want to say, of course, liking and subscribing is free, and we appreciate when you do that. But if you think you might need some new threads for this year, this season that we still have a lot of, you can head over to shop.rblrsports.com and check out everything we've got there and possibly help this podcast just a little bit more. You can take 10% off of everything using the promo code COYR. And please do check it out. I think that if you do, like I always say, you will find something you like. So check it out, and there will be a link in the description. All right, everyone. I am here now with Bruno Baltazar of Dynamic Dynamo, the podcast, or one podcast, I should say, related to the Houston Dynamo in Major League Soccer. So, Bruno, thank you for joining us. We have, a lot of questions about how Houston are doing, and we appreciate you taking the time to be on with us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure. It's one of those things that the Houston Dynamo, I think, is still trying to figure out where they are in the season as well. So, and especially now a U.S. Cup, it's always, it's always a beautiful atmosphere to bring both leagues together and have a matchup such as this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that especially lower league teams kind of look forward to games like this because it's a chance to test yourself against the top division, obviously. And I think even more than fans, players relish that because they get to say, like, we deserve to be on the same field, all that kind of stuff. But without getting too much into the psychodynamics of everything here, let's focus on the two teams involved. And Bruno, if you could give us like a general background of Houston Dynamo. I said, before we started recording here, we've got a general idea, at least at RBLR Sports, about, Major League Soccer, Houston Dynamo specifically. And I did the Open Cup website preview of this. So I've actually looked into Houston a little bit more. But for our listeners, I'm assuming that there will be a little less regular knowledge and working knowledge of the team. So, yeah, if you could, just tell us generally, other than I'm pretty sure everyone knows they're in Houston, what is the deal with Dynamo?
Well, it's a team that is changing. We just got a new head coach before the season started in Ben Olsen. Those who follow the MLS are quite familiar with him. He was at DC United for about a decade down there, and now he joins for the first time, the Dynamo and really outside the DC market, even because when he played, he was even a player down there too for about 11 years or so. So it's kind of like his first venture in the MLS outside from the East Coast and DC United. So this team, we brought back barely a lot of players, and new coach, new philosophy, new dynamics. Trying to clean up the roster from and bring his own guys that he picks. So that's why it's been some bumpy roads. I mean, the Dynamo have not made the playoffs since 2017. So it's, in the past, I want to say 2-3 seasons, these kind of team became a little bit the butt of the joke with San Jose in the MLS, where people just kind of took it for, okay, the Dynamo, maybe the Dynamo should have been, in a second division. Maybe they win. Maybe they should join Tampa Bay Rowdies in terms of competition, And that's kind of like it's been rough seasons down here. Even the fan base this season, it's has a normal tendency to be negative because they're accustomed to negative results. So even when things seem to be changing a little bit, people are not buying into it yet. And it makes sense that they're not buying into it yet. And so this season, it's been a tale of two teams, a team that plays at home undefeated. As a matter of fact, this team just broke the MLS record for the beginning of the season, keeping not suffering goals. For the first time, a team for 4 games in a row opening the season has not allowed a single goal at home. And so, I mean, when you break an MLS record, that's pretty impressive. Yet the fan base here is just piling up on criticizing Ben Olsen and the team. We are right now standing at 6th place, which is obviously a playoff position. And right now, I mean, with the new rules, the MLS, 9 teams make it to the playoffs, but we are sitting already 4 points clear from that. And with 1 less game than most teams, and obviously for those who don't know, our record is 4 wins, one draw and 3 losses, and all our wins have come at home, where we have not allowed a goal, and we won every single one of them. Now, away games, we lost all of them, and we tied one, which was the recent game. So that's why it's a tale of two teams. It's the one at home, which brings a lot of energy, and one that plays away that seems to just lack energy and tactical discipline. And that's kind of like why it's tough for me, now even extra tough for me, playing in a U.S. Cup where technically a team is supposed to rotate players, especially from the MLS versus a lower tier league. For me to even like predict, number one, the lineup, but number two, what kind of energy is this team going to bring on away? Because they are on the slump, and we did got the first point of the season in away this past weekend. But it was bad. It was ugly. We shouldn't even got that tie, and obviously we went back home on this past Saturday and we got the win against Inter Miami, which is a team that is struggling too. But so this team kind of has amnesia on the away defeats because they have been bad. They have been bad defeats. And then he comes home and there's a certain swag into this team that it's like, this is our home. You're not going to you're not going to get anything from it. But the games are not visually static. This is not a team that necessarily is going to show off. It's a team that just defends mainly. Ben Olsen's philosophy is just about defending. If we don't suffer a goal, we don't lose it. Okay, a tie is the least of two evils, right? And I feel like he also knows that he doesn't have a lot of naturally playmakers. Of course, for those who listen to these, you probably are accustomed. You probably know about Hector Herrera, the Mexican national team player. He is our player. He's our star player. But aside from him, you have Arturo over there on the back, or number 5 position player, which he's very solid. He's been, to me, is the best signing so far this offseason. He's Arturo.
Yeah, I did like him when he was brought in from Columbus. He was always a player that I liked there.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that is not flashy. He does what he's supposed to. You don't even realize that he's playing most of the games. But he does. He connects. He's the one that makes the first transition from defense to offense, and he's the one that tends to connect with Herrera. And then Herrera tries to look up in the field and starting that long range pass for the attacking to the last attacking third of the end. This is a team that likes to use speed to get you off guard. It's not a team. The more time and the more possession you have the ball, the more you're starting to understand that there's not a lot of creativity in 1v1 difference makers. That's where they struggle. That's where we struggled this past night. And of course, there's a big controversy over here regarding Sebastian Ferreira not starting, or striker is not starting, the DP player. And Corey Bird is now our starter, and Bird is not taking shots. He has not scored a single goal this season, yet he's a striker, and there's so much money involved in Sebas, and Sebas is not Ben Olsen's guy. So this is where you see that a coach coming to a program in its first season, how many bumps he has to face, because there's some players that got stuck. They're not your guys. And I know you guys, I think that you guys changed about 11 players or so on the roster. And
yeah, it was also a season of a lot of upheaval, but we'll see how it turns out, obviously, with all of those changes coming in.
That's what you face with is that the first weeks of the season are not going to look pretty with so many different players and them not understanding one another and not having that chemistry together, in trying to learn the concepts and the movements of the ball and with the ball of players that most people don't understand, that it takes time. And yes, you can practice these as much as you can, but there's nothing like game day, right. And that's really where you get your reps, and that's where you really start shining. Formation wise, I know you asked me about it. It's a 4-3-3 formation. That's what they tend to do. Of course, when they don't have the ball, they bulk up a little bit more in the middle. Just to compensate more. And like I said, this team is very defended-minded. He has a lot of, I would say, if there's a talent, there's more talent on the back. And of course, offensively, they like to bring the wings, like most MLS teams nowadays. Just to compensate the numbers, bring back the wings. And this team is very heavy on crosses. They love to cross. Sometimes, I think against Inter, for example, yesterday, the one thing that they struggled with was just using the middle because it was wide open. And they did score when they used the middle. They did at the most dangerous when they did the middle, when they used the middle, but it was only 4 or 5 times in the game that they did it. So they became very one-dimensional team. So in terms of names, this season, Artur, like I've mentioned, of course, Herrera, coming with the first off season with the team, is really looking like a rejuvenated player. Is really excelling. Bassi, we signed him coming from the second division in France, but he's really shining. He has a decent IQ on the field, but he has a good 1v1 technique. He can dribble you. He can use the speed. He's a shorter guy. He's one of the strikers you'll see. Like I said, there's a big controversy with Bird on the field versus Sebas being off the field. And the reason for it is because Ben Olsen wants a striker that pressures off the ball from the go. He wants high pressure on the field. That's what he wants. And so he wants you to not be comfortable building the game from the back, which I believe is what Tampa likes to do. And of course you guys like to use a little bit more the edges of the field. But so that's something that, in terms of players that normally play, and this is the key here. These are names from players that normally play, that have every minute so far on the legs in this season.
Yeah.
Now, we don't play for 10 days because the game against LAFC was just moved because LAFC is on the CONCACAF champions and against Philadelphia, and Philadelphia had a week off coming up. So LA thought it was fair. And Ben Olsen actually was very critical of it because he said, well, we already booked the plane and hotel for Tampa. And then from Tampa, we were already expected to travel to LA. But now we have to cancel that, and there's money involved and all that. And he claimed that Houston is still a market that is not respected in the league. So he was trying to make like a scene out of it, I guess. But that's something that happened about 2-3 days ago that was just announced. So now this team has 10 days to prepare. So the bigger question is, what kind of Houston is going to roll up in Tampa?
Right.
And I think that it's going to be probably 7. I want to, like, for example, Steve Clark, he's doing amazing, or he's 37 years old. He's our goalie. These are normally the games that you put the one that works his butt off, that he's always on the bench, that he's never going to play unless the major goalie gets injured. This is where you bring Andrew Tarbell or substitute goalie. This is I'm quite confident this is what you're going to see there. Okay, and there's going to be other players such as Thor. Now his name is Thor letter for Ulfarsson. So excuse my language, but yes, he's going to be plugged in there. We have a young player that has been plugged here and there, but he's been kind of leaky. Brooklyn Rhymes is going to be there too. So these are names. I feel like you're going to see a lot of the players, a lot of our bench roll up in there in being starter players for Yelp. I thought they were going to call up some Dynamo 2, Dynamo 2, or a second team that we have. A lot of those players being called up. And I believe that that's going to happen more for the bench because, I feel like Ben Olsen is still not going to completely disrespect Tampa and just going to roll up with a bunch of second league team or the second team, So I think that he's going to give rotation to a lot of it. And if the game doesn't blend well, it doesn't go well, then maybe in the 65 minutes, 70 minutes, then he might put some players down there that have more minutes on the legs and more chemistry to try to definitely not lose the game. But I think that's more or less what you guys should be able or should see it in that match.
Yeah, to take it back to 2022 in the Open Cup, we started the third round when, all the MLS teams came in. We started playing against Orlando City. And Orlando City kind of did exactly what you're describing. They brought in a couple of the guys that they have from their homegrown players that don't get a lot of playing time. They brought in a couple of the substitutes. But generally, there were still a couple of players who were from their first 11, and they would get, some regular playing time, obviously. Then they let it play out. The Rowdies were doing well, seemingly holding their own. There was definitely a lot more, energy in that because of the rivalry with the two teams being so close. But then eventually, with a closer game, Orlando brought on their kind of star players, as it were, and those guys definitely did help make a difference. So I wouldn't be surprised if it followed a similar
script to what you just described there. But I had a question if we could kind of expand on what you were talking about here. So I think what'll interest the Rowdies fan base the most out of everything you said is that Houston so far this year, when I was looking at it, and then you said it too, they have obviously won all of their home games, but then when they go on the road, the only team that they've managed to get a point with is the Red Bulls, and they're not doing that well so far this year either. I didn't see that game, so I don't know how it went, but could you kind of drag out for us what the difference is that you see between the team that's on the road and the team that's playing at home? You said that there's kind of maybe an energy that they're like, this is our home, we got to kind of represent, so to speak. But yeah, what do you see as the differences between just those occasions?
I spoke to Dylan Maples, which is a Houston Dynamo 2 player. He's their captain the other day, and there was something that I brought up too, and what's the difference is a pro soccer player that might just really make the difference, because you can tell that it's still the same starting 11, it's still the same tactics, it's still the same coach, it's still the same players. So how can this happen that is so different? And and he told me that, well, yeah, you do talk about, of course, energy because you feed off the fans, right? But more than that, it's your routines in match day, the day before the match day. You don't have to travel to some other town. You don't have to walk around town. You just, when you at home, you wake up, you have breakfast served by your girl or whatever, and you just wake up at the time that you feel like it because you only need to drive later on into the game, right? So your routine as a soccer player is it's very scripted almost, right? But when it comes to road games, it becomes very unscripted. It's kind of like, well, this is what we're going to do. This is the hotel we're going to be at. This is the place we're going to be at. And everywhere you go, even the locker rooms, even leading to the locker rooms, even everything is unfamiliar to you, and there's circumstances, for example, I know that some teams have curfews, some teams are very laid back on curfews, it's more like old school. Nowadays, they kind of let players do what they want. But I've noticed, for example, there's players that are, this is a fact, even though I probably shouldn't say this, but there's players that are away games, they are up away past midnight on their social media, okay? And when they are home, that doesn't happen. And it makes sense. I mean, you are home, you are with your peers, with your friends, with your family, right? You don't have to whatever. But then you are away in your hotel room. You might have a roommate, but you're bored. And then next thing you know, it's 1 a.m., it's 2 a.m., you woke up and you're a little bit drowsy, right? And I remember, because I'm a coach too, so I remember when we sometimes travel to other places, man, even just the short bus drive, it makes you a little bit, man, tired. I don't know what it is, but it just kind of drags your energy. And then you roll up a bit there, and then all of a sudden you have to just warm it up, and it just feels off, And I feel like this is a team with so many new faces yet that, think about it. It's kind of like, you just started a new job, right? You might be the best individual for that job, right? You know about everything, right? But you just feel uncomfortable because you don't know how to interact now for 2 days straight around these people. And because we are so young in the season that these people have not yet opportunities to kind of blend in, to feel safe, to feel like their best version of themselves. That's why I keep hearing about cookouts and players trying to hang out after practice. Because after practice, after 3 p.m., there's not much to do. They're kind of free to do what they want to do. So if they don't decide to kind of have these events together, there's no chemistry being built off the field. And it's important because when you roll up on the field, it kind of really shows if you have chemistry or not. And you see them more, especially on away games, when it's you versus everybody, than it is at home when it's you and everyone behind you versus them. And I feel like it's something so kind of mundane, so it doesn't even make sense because these people are professionals, but it's really the only difference I see. Because it's still the same team. It's just the energy isn't there. In the previous game where we got finally the first points, I will tell you that it was awful. It was awful. We should have been down by 4 easy, but we weren't because Steve Clark was the man of the match. I remember there was a stats that I actually pulled up, and I don't remember the numbers, but we had I think it was something ridiculous, such as over 30 clearances on the box the entire game. We were just
Gotcha.
massacred down there. Massacred. And we actually scored the goal out of nowhere. We actually put Thor, our bench player, and you won the 50-50 balls, which we were struggling to all day long. And on a counterattack, we were able to score the goal, and we almost won the game. I mean, they only scored in the 89th minute. That's so in many ways, it kind of made us a little bit sour, because out of their ridiculous exhibition that we did, because we were massacred defensively, we actually should have won the game if we have all the ball for 4 more minutes. But I think energy is such a big thing on this team. And another challenge that is going to be extra this week is that, well, it is the US Cup. It is against a team that you're supposed to win on paper. So are you going to disrespect Tampa and not bring energy, or are you going to play to try to show off to your coach, especially those players that don't get many minutes? And that's more what I'm betting on, is like the players that don't get so many minutes, trying to say, hey, coach, I'm over here. And speaking to each, for example, Eric Sviatchenko, which joined the team about a month and a half ago, he hasn't played a single minute because it took him until last week to finally get his work visa cleared.
Oh, gotcha.
So this guy came from Midtjylland. He's 42 years old, defender, center midfielder. He is most likely will be plugged as our starting center back going forward. But that's one player that I put money that he's starting because he needs competitive time, because he hasn't seen any competitive time in probably 3 months.
Gotcha. I remember the signing being announced, and I forgot that he was there because he obviously had not played. So that explains why. But, so Bruno, you've been really gracious with your time. I appreciate how much you're helping out all of us to understand what's going on here. If you could give us a little bit more specifically on the players who you might think are involved. So if I could get from you, like, who are kind of the stats leaders on the team, and then when it comes into this game specifically, if you expect Brooklyn Reigns or Thor or Ulfarsson. Now I'm doing it too. Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. But those guys are, Sviatchenko. If you could explain, like, what what you might expect to see from them. Like, I only know Brooklyn Reigns from, apparently he's very hyped, but I haven't seen a lot of, game time from him. So I don't know what his style is. I don't know what his game is. So yeah, if you could go into, what you think the Rowdies team actually should kind of look out for when they're on the field.
Yeah, I think that, being able to, I know you guys have been dealing with some injuries and things like that. And of course, the players that stayed were kind of injured, I guess. And then the players that left were a lot of players, and I feel like, on paper, it looks like a little bit, you guys left wing is something that teams have been trying to explore. So it's not going to surprise me that you see a lot of the wing players once again. That this is our style of play, but this is a game where Brooklyn Reigns has been getting a lot of minutes, but he's also being criticized a lot in recent match. He's kind of like just staying on the bench now. He's young, he's a promising player, but you can tell that he's too green yet for MLS, at least starting caliber player. But this is the type of games where you kind of try to bring back his confidence a little bit more. He's and so I think that this is a perfect game for him to come back for Franco Escobar, which did a decent game this past game. But that's another opportunity for him to just like, okay, hey coach, maybe I can shine over here, and that's something that I think he might be a dangerous player that you might see for the Dynamo, especially if they are rotating players. Bassi has been one of our top goal scorers. Unfortunately, we have had a lot of penalties called for us. So a lot of his goals have came from penalties. We are struggling to score from running plays without being setback pieces. And we rely too heavy on just Herrera kicking the ball, and that hasn't been enough. So that's what I'm betting, that some of these less used players such as Thor are going to try to be a little bit more aggressive because they do have to show off to the coach, and a coach that is struggling to find players that are able to finish off to just score or take good shots is what's going to allow them to get more minutes. And this is the best opportunity they get. It's a golden opportunity that they will get throughout the season, especially for those players who play less, to really say, hey, man, we are worthy of some good minutes. and that's where I think that it's, you know, you're going to see players shine because they have to shine, they have to perform better. Defensively, you're going to see Eric Sviatchenko. He's going to be plugged in, and he's going to be the leader of that defense from the go. This is, I mean, we're talking about a guy that was a captain in a Europa League team such as Midtjylland.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's definitely going to bring some strength to the youth that I think that you should see it. I mean, Adebe has been having too many minutes out there, so it won't surprise me that he gets maybe some minutes off. Bartlow did an amazing game this past game, and then obviously Stairs, which scored the winning goal, have been just overused, I would say. So you would not make me surprised if we see players such as Luis Caicedo and Griffin Dorsey. Well, maybe in Mikael. I think that he hasn't gotten really any looks, maybe 10, 15 minutes throughout the season. So these are the players that you guys are probably should get familiar with, because and it's tough for me to say that what this team matters so far on away games, because the players that are going to roll have not been players that necessarily played on these away games, if that makes sense. So this is going to be a team that is like, not only with it, this is where it becomes like a trap games for teams like y'all, because you guys are throwing everything down there, throwing everything you got, right? And I know that you guys want to show off too, because, you know, some of y'all want to play in the MLS too, the players and stuff. So it's a golden opportunity to it. And it becomes a trap because some of the players that are on your end might want to show off so much they might become a little bit selfish. And that's a dangerous play for y'all. While you're playing on the other side, a team that has all to lose, to be honest with you. If they lose this match, they have all to lose. There's not, okay, you win, okay, you did what you're supposed to. You lose, now you're the butt of the joke here, you know? But at the same time, because you're rolling younger players, these players are players that are going to be like, well, I kind of feel like I deserve in the MLS, to be here in the MLS, but I haven't gotten many minutes in the MLS. So my only way to really prove my stance is to come up against this team here at Tampa Bay and to kind of just show that I have what it takes to play. So in terms of confidence, it's great too, but it won't surprise me if the first minutes, honestly, both minutes, you're going to see a lot of both teams being nervous, because different reasons why they're nervous. But nervous, one trying to show off to get more minutes and go somewhere else, and then the other one to just deserve more minutes. So that's where I think players such as Sviatchenko are going to shine, because you're going to see an elite player out there on the back. And then forward, you'll not surprise me if Brooklyn Rhynes tries to because he's a little bit one step more from all the other players that might be rolling up in minutes. And it's a player that has quite a lot. He's on the grasp of going back to the Dynamo too, if he continues to have a lot of minutes. But Olsen likes him, but he needs to take advantage of his chances, and nothing better than a US Cup game, I think, to solidify his presence.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And, you know, honestly, the note you made about both teams being nervous, that just makes sense, because the Rowdies obviously have had a pretty tough start to this season. I don't think that that's a secret for anybody who's going to be listening. But even beyond that, you know, the Rowdies have not actually had the chance to host a team from MLS since 2013. You know, in all of those years, we've gone out on the road. And I think that game ended in a 1-0 win versus Seattle Sounders, which, you know, surprising as that sounds, I don't know if we're in the same headspace for that. So I think that we're probably going to be very, very keen, obviously, on trying to win this game, because it would be, you know, immediate lore for the team if we were able to beat an MLS team again at home. But yeah, doing so obviously is going to take a lot more than just, you know, the want, the will, all of that kind of stuff. But I appreciate you, like I said, taking all the time to speak with us today. If I could get one more thing from you today, Bruno, it would just be, what is your prediction for this game? Where do you see this game going in terms of the scoreline? And actually, no, I have two more things. What is your prediction? And have you heard of any Houston fans coming down to Tampa Bay to take in the game?
Well, my prediction, you know, and for those who listen to me, that normally listen to me, know that I hate that. I hate making predictions, especially this season, because you just never know what you get with this team.
I've been pretty terrible at it personally, so
yeah. So I guess we get discredited, like we don't know nothing we're talking about all the time we spend for nothing. But I want to say that it's the beauty of the cup, man, and the beauty of going to. And I think that these games, these first rounds, the lower league teams should always host the matches. First of all, I think that it should be a mandated situation to bring like soccer and enthusiasm to markets that normally don't see it. And it gives an opportunity for those leagues to also try to improve, to bring visibility as well. But I want to say, just because the beauty of the league, I want to say you guys scored at least one goal to bring that beautiful atmosphere down there. You guys gave a very nice looking stadium, by the way. But I think a 2-1 maybe. I don't want to get too cocky and say more, but I think that a lot of you guys are going to bring it's the most important game of the season so far in terms, I believe, for y'all. And I know you guys have gotten a little bit rocky things too, but you guys are getting some players off injuries. Like I said, you guys are trying. You just have a new player that is already on the starting lineup for y'all.
Yep.
So so things are changing for y'all. I think and like I said, I think you guys deserve respect. For me to say more than a 2-1, I think it'll be a little bit disrespectful. It might happen. Hopefully it does, but yeah, I think 2-1. And in terms of Houston fans, I didn't necessarily hear too much about it. In terms of the organized groups, there is nothing that I know of. There's something coming up for them to come to Dallas and things like that. But unfortunately, I did not, unless maybe some Houstonians that live down there is the only thing that I can think of, which I'm sure there's Houstonians everywhere. And there's Californians in Houston. They claim they're from Houston forever too. So there's also that.
Yeah, I mean, it being the middle of the week, I would imagine that's a little more difficult to take that flight. But, we'll keep our eye out for any fans in the orange and black of Houston Dynamo. And I really, this was a great interview for me, just because, the MLS that I can watch, it often actually overlaps with when the Rowdies play, so I don't get to see a ton. But, if I get to see 1 or 2 games a week, I'm like, wow. And then, I have to pick which ones those are. So I don't get to see a ton of Houston, and this is like a very good background. I definitely have a much better idea of where the team is coming from. So again, Bruno, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck to you. Hope on our end, we hope you don't win, but obviously it is very good that we are getting the chance to play this game. Like you said, I think that you're going to make a lot of fan friends just by saying that the lower division team should host, but we'll save that for another time.
It's true, man. It's true. It's it's more should be done about the league, in these 2 leagues, especially these 2 leagues as being like the top tier leagues, to just collaborate too, and especially in preseason to have more matchups. I know you guys played a preseason game, I think, against one MLS team, but I think that not enough is done. And I think that, there's a good quality soccer being done down there. The Rowdies, traditionally a very juggernaut defensively, and there's I think a lot of people sleep on these league itself and the quality that is down there. So I do think that Houston, if he doesn't respect y'all, there's going to be a bad surprise.
Yeah, there's definitely the potential for that. But yeah, all right. Well, Bruno, again, thank you so much. And if if we get further into the season or we get another chance, I hope that we can have you on again.
Absolutely, it's been my pleasure. I love what you guys do.
And if you could take just a moment and, plug your podcast for everyone listening, because I'm sure there will be some overlap between the 2 fan bases. And maybe we'll even see if there's some future corroboration.
Absolutely. If you guys go to Houston Dynamic Dynamo.godaddysites.com, if you go down there, you got all the links for social media. If you actually go to the section of the website where it says weekly podcast, that's where you can find the links for the podcast. There's video conversations down there as well too, with some former players and people that are around the league, or players even itself. And then obviously, if you go to news articles, in games recap, if you go there on Tuesday, I actually broke down how you guys tend to play, and I did spend about 3 hours of it trying to figure out how you guys play. And I did watch quite a lot of games on fast forward every time the ball was out of bounds, trying to see how you guys play. So if you want to get a glimpse too of the Houston, how we did it against Inter Miami, which I really break down with stats. So, so you can get more familiar with how we play strategy wise. Also give it a follow, give it a like.
That's perfect. I think that I will actually probably spend some time doing that. But yeah, all right. That will do it for this interview. And again, Bruno, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, Carlos, we obviously just had a good interview with Bruno Baltazar of Dynamic Dynamo, a podcast about the Houston Dynamo. And with that being said, I think that it's really cool to get a very good perspective. The guy's a coach and everything. Like, he knows what he's talking about. But yeah, the Houston Dynamo have had trouble on the road this year while they're doing well, of course, and at home. And they are also probably not likely to play their best 11 in this game. Now, that being said, their reserve team, even if that's what they choose to go with, I don't know if it'll be a full reserve team, but there are players on there who need to make their debut, big name players like Eric Sviatchenko that he mentioned. And there are some other players that were brought in to be important players but haven't been playing much. Sebastian Ferreira that we might end up seeing. How do you think this game is going to go? Do you expect that maybe Houston will go with, their second team, their reserve team even, or, use the young kids?
Yeah, I would almost be a little bit more I'm almost a little more scared if they play like their bench players type thing. If they go with a little bit more of a reserve squad, because those guys have so much more to prove. Like, those are the players that are going to come out with, play it like it's a championship game. Whereas I think mentally, if you play a lot of your starters, these are the guys that maybe won't care as much about this game and are looking forward to their next game against Salt Lake at home, thinking about the league. But no matter the mentality of the squad, second team guys, reserve players, bench players are always going to play with a lot more passion and energy, fighting for that spot at the table and in the starting lineup. So I'm a little bit concerned either way, obviously. I think it's going to be a tough game, naturally. That being said, like you mentioned, taking a look back at their recent games, they've struggled, like you said, pretty heavily on the road. I don't think they've picked up a win on the road this year. I think they picked up one draw. They took a 3-0 loss on the road to New England, who's the best team in the Eastern Conference, though. So maybe it doesn't mean too much. They also beat LA Galaxy at home 3-0. LA Galaxy is not very good in the Western Conference, but still, it looks like a team that can score a decent amount of goals. But it looks like it varies game to game. And again, I think there's a lot of unknowns in terms of who they're actually going to play, like you've said. So it's hard to preview it specifically with who they're going to play. It's going to be interesting to see, though. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about how this game's going to go. On one hand, I feel like, why not us type thing, where it's like we haven't been playing very well, but also Houston's not doing too hot on the road, like we keep mentioning. I'm back and forth on how it's going to go, if that makes sense. We'll have to see. I think it's going to wait till we actually hit the field. I think it's unfortunate that there won't be a broadcast of this game because we can't keep up with the action in live stream if you're not down there, which is all the more reason to get out to Al Lang Stadium. But yeah, I think it's going to be a good game either way. I think I've seen some people just counting us off entirely. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we'll put up a really good fight. I think we do have a pretty good chance of pulling out a good result, James. Actually, I'm not just saying that as the optimist on the show. I do think we have a pretty good chance of pulling out a good result. I don't see it being a high scoring affair. I could see it going to penalties. I could see us, I could see the game being 1-1 at the end of overtime and then needing penalties to decide it. I don't see it being a high scoring affair. I think our back line is going to play their best game of the season. These type of high pressure games against really good opponents bring out the best in teams, and I think it'll bring out the best in us. So that's kind of where I'll leave that prediction. Just based on my quick, taking a look back, and Houston looks like they run a 4-3-3 pretty commonly. Make of that what you will. I think we can match up pretty well against that. we have big enough guys to prevent crosses. I think my concern is the wingers driving in. It seems like that's produced some issues for us, especially in this past game. We'll need our outside backs and our wing backs to play pretty well to hold them out and not let them dribble by us like in this past game, in Spaulding's case. So, James, I know you and the guys at Dynamo podcast talked a lot about it already, so I won't pick at your thoughts too much. I think that's kind of where I am for this game. Do you have any concluding thoughts looking ahead to this game? Any just feelings about how it might go?
Honestly, based on what we've been talking about with San Diego and how that game went, and looking back to how this season has gone so far, I think one of my biggest issues is whether or not we're going to have Lewis Hilton. I think that's just going to play a pretty big role because you can see when he's out of the game, like it is a big difference. So that's going to be my big thing, I suppose. If we get him, I think we're in with a shout. We had a very good game against Orlando City in the third round of the Open Cup last season. I thought that we took them all the way, and they had to bring on their top guys, their designated players from South America to actually try and take the game forward and beat us. So it kind of pissed everybody off if you're Neil Collins, but we did very well in that game. So I think that if everybody is healthy, minus Leo Fernandez, of course, then I think we do have a good shot. So crossing my fingers and hoping for the best here. And now we're going to move on to our extra time segment here, Carlos, because we have gone a little long already. Let's just hop in right here and say congrats to Jan Ekra on making his USL Championship record 252nd appearance. I mean, that's amazing. Obviously, the longevity, but also, the desire that teams have for him to be on their roster. Obviously, it means that he's a good player because the guy that he overtook, Dane Kelly, is still a professional player. He's actually down in USL League One. Meanwhile, Jan Ekra has overtaken him in the USL Championship. So obviously, I don't actually know. I think they're roughly the same ages, but I don't want to quote and say one is this, one is that. But for Jan Ekra to still be around and still making appearances, he should, of course, barring injury or something, be around for at least the rest of the season, if not another season or another season. And I mean, that proves what a good player he is in my eyes.
Yeah, I went on another tab and just quickly looked up the ages of Dane Kelly and Jan Ekra. Jan Ekra is actually a little bit older. They're both 32, but Jan Ekra is older by a few months. So I think even more of a testimony of the quality of player he is, that he's still playing at this level and teams want to play him. Not only just want him, but want to play him, like you said. I think is really important. And unfortunate that's the kind of result we got on his big day. Hopefully we can make up for it with a few big wins, including this win on Wednesday, please, in his honor. So, let's hope for a good result or two this week for him. He deserves it. He's a fantastic player. Really, really good guy in my conversations with him, just really willing to connect with the fans. He's always one of the last guys on the field after games, signing autographs and stuff like that for the kids. Really a man of the people. Love Jan Ekra. And if it was up to me, he would stay here for the rest of his career and, retire as an assistant coach or something like that. But great guy. I'm happy for him. Hopefully we get some results for him this week.
Absolutely. And we do want to take one more moment to, again, reiterate what RBLR Sports and the Rowdy Show specifically is doing coming up here. On May 20th, we are hosting our first ever watch party. The Rowdies will be away in Southern Texas playing RGV Toros, and the RBLR Sports team will, of course, be covering it from Berry House off of the Ybor Strip. It is 2 blocks away, so it is, a very good location, obviously. There are free beer giveaways. There is swag giveaways from both the Rowdies, from Rowdies swag, but also RBLR swag. And there are going to be beer specials. There's anything you could want. And, of course, the parking, if you're worried about that, it is super easy. It is close to, I believe, a trolley stop as well. If you want to use our beautiful public transportation, like I would always suggest you do. But please do check it out. We're going to have a great time. We're going to have a pregame show even for just this game specifically. And, we will make sure that this is something that people want to attend, because we would like to keep doing these in the future. So come out to the first one and see how good we can make it. And we will keep working on those as well. And I think, Carlos, that'll do it for this episode. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We appreciate when you do so, of course. And if you would, please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We are at RBLR Sports. I am on Twitter as well, at RBLR James K. Carlos, what about you?
At Carlos TPA10 on Twitter. Tweeting a lot about Lightning playoff action. Go Bolts. Also, shout out to the Rays. The Rays are off to a fantastic start. Love our Tampa Bay teams killing it. It's going to be awesome. I'm excited for this week, and I'm sure I'll be tweeting all about the Open Cup stuff this week and all that fun stuff this weekend with Detroit as well.
Absolutely. And you can get at both of us, but please like and subscribe to our podcast while you're there. We will be on all of your major podcast feeds, obviously Apple, Google Podcasts, and we are on YouTube if you want to get the full experience. So please do check us out in all of those locations and more. For another week and a big one, come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.